exchanging, whether it's your marketing outreach or just maybe a touch communication where you want to just touch your clients and stay in communication with them. But the data that you're sharing or the information really isn't proprietary or personal in a nature. It probably doesn't matter how you're exchanging that, whether you're doing it through a text or through an email. But what we encourage you to think about is, what am I exchanging? And what are the pitfalls in exchanging this information? So am I putting my client at risk if I exchange some of this information in a format that's not protected? So for example, what we've seen across the nation, not necessarily here, I haven't heard of specifics, but if you're sharing real estate contracts, most people say, well, what's in there, right? If you look at the last page of the contract, there's all kinds of contact information. If you look at the first page, maybe the first 2 pages, you're going to delineate the size of the transaction. Do we have a $118,000 property that we're dealing with, or is this a $1.2 million property that we're dealing with? If I'm someone who is curious as far as who might have more money in the bank, I might also flip to page 2 if I've had access to your email and I'm reading your contracts to see, is this a cash deal? Because if so, the names on this contract are of much more interest to me now than they were 10 minutes ago. Are they borrowing 95% of the loan amount? Nah, maybe not as much a concern because there isn't that much cash I can grab. However, the sellers might be of interest to me because what I don't know at this point based upon that contract is, what's their debt? If it's a $1.2 million sale, is there a mortgage on this property? Well, gosh, I can find out in about 30 seconds online because that information is all public. So then that tells me that the seller is either getting $1 million back, or I can theoretically look at the mortgage amount. I can find out the interest rate by Google, getting the average amount, and find out how much. I can get within probably $100,000, unless they've been making some pretty substantial principal payments. I can figure out how much cash they're pulling out of this transaction. So is it worth my time as a hacker to invest trying to insert myself into the communications on this specific transaction to try to capture sellers' proceeds with compromised email and wire fraud? Or is the buyer paying cash, putting a significant amount of cash into the transaction that it might benefit me to target that person to try to get my wire instructions to them to capture their cash to close? So what we might think of as innocuous and maybe not substantial information on its face, if you really get in the weeds, to use Justin's phrase, it might be information that to us doesn't seem that important, but if I happen to be in one of those countries that actually rewards compromised email and wire fraud, it's really important for me. And I now have a very specific target that I can go after. So when we, at the title company, we look at communications, that's the first thing I start with is, what am I exchanging and how personal is that information? And what is the worst thing someone could possibly do with it? So we distrust most things and we work from that perspective, which is why we do encrypt end-to-end typically our communication if there's anything that's got a personal, private, non-public information, because we're held to the same standards that lenders are. So that's why for us, you hear about that from us a lot, whether it's email communication, whether it's video communication. We're going to get into that audio, video, online notary in a little bit. And you'll hear from me again about encryption, because that information again becomes crucial and important to make sure that it's not going to get usurped and used in a manner that none of us would expect it to be. Do most of you communicate? Are you communicating with your clients in an encrypted fashion, or are you relying on the WhatsApp or your FaceTime? Are you relying on your Messenger? Are you relying on that provider to provide that encryption for you?
Feel free to share, folks.
Okay, please do.
Relying on the provider.
Relying on the provider. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's probably the case for most parties. I think in our business, most of us are relying on the provider, whether it's an app, whether it's a website, whether it's Microsoft, to tell us what those standards are. But I think it would also benefit us to take 5 minutes or 20 minutes, if we're not as techy as Justin, to look at what their standards are and what the expectations of each of those providers are. Because I think that as we find, and Justin, you know better than I, as we progress into a time like we're living in today, where everybody is working digitally, I don't care what your business is, and it doesn't matter what you're doing, nearly everyone is at some point online communicating. And that doesn't matter if it's your financial information or the people that are filing for unemployment, or if they're looking at homes. No matter what we're doing, they're grocery shopping online. Everything we're doing has an online component to it. And so we really should be giving some consideration to how are we protecting ourselves. And maybe that's also a way you can reach out to your clients, is how are they protecting themselves? Clearly not in an hour-long call, but little tidbits of information in a manner that they can absorb, I think would be helpful. And you just aren't hearing much about that online. Do any of you have any questions about who encrypts and why, and when would be good scenarios to encrypt? Okay.
Yeah, I would actually like to know who encrypts.
As far as apps and providers, or when, say, we as a title company tend to encrypt?
As a title company, so we receive a email back from you and it's an encrypted message. How can I secure that for my clients? How can I?
Okay, so generally speaking, here's what I encourage. If we're going to send sensitive information, we are going to encrypt that, and we usually prefer to communicate directly to the consumer. What we do is we use, it's a Microsoft system. It's called, I think, Send Secure or Start Safe. I think it's the same system. They've renamed it like 3 times in the last 2 years. But what happens is when we get a title order placed, we typically will reach out to the seller's attorney or to the buyer's attorney, and we're going to ask for the buyers and or the sellers. The sellers we're not as concerned with unless they're going to have their funds wired to them. We'll ask for their information later. But at some point, we're going to try to secure the consumer's cell phone number and email address. And the reason is we're reaching out directly to them to communicate with them and let them know how we're going to exchange wire instructions or any sensitive information. And I say that because I don't want to get too deep here, but there's a particular exception or two that will show on a title commitment, and we need to get some really deep personal information from consumers to make sure that liens and judgments do or do not affect them. And in order to complete that form, it has everything on it that anyone would need to do lots of bad things to their identity. So even exchanging those documents, we do it all securely, and we use it through our platform. It's a Microsoft platform, and we do encrypt that communication. What's beautiful about that, Natalie, is when we send that encrypted communication out to the clients and they click reply back to us, they remain within the veil of our encryption. So what they send back stays safe and secured end to end as well. So that communication, it stays protected either way. And as long as you go within that secure email and continue to reply and communicate through that specific communication, it stays encrypted. And that doesn't mean that I might not email you directly, Natalie, just from haish@ctt.com. That is not encrypted. Although our system does filter all of our communications, and it looks for certain information, like social security numbers. It will look for certain formatted information that might be freehand typed into an email. And our system has several overlays that will automatically encrypt those emails, just in case an employee, oops, got in a hurry and forgot. So it may go out encrypted and the sender may not be aware of it. Our system will grab that and then overlay the encryption. And sometimes that email then is delayed, as opposed to you receiving it in 30 seconds, you might get it in a minute. It still happens very quickly. We have chosen to communicate directly with the consumer for a variety of reasons. The most important is that we're trying to protect those of you that may not have access to the same encryption services that companies like ours does. And in addition to protecting you from having to have those conversations, there's the whole liability that goes with that. We have found that most of the successful wire fraud compromised email schemes that have been out there, the hackers, for lack of a better, I still need to come up with a better term for calling them, they've been able to insert themselves into a transaction and sound to all of the additional parties that they sound like they belong there. Their English has gotten markedly better, so you almost don't even know it used to be we could find them because you'd read it and go, wow, did a third grader write this? That is not how it is anymore. They've either hired some people that speak English very well, or they've given them all some very, very good English lessons. Their grammar's gotten better. So it's very difficult oftentimes to find them. There are certain flags you can still see in the emails, and you will want to look for those, but email is their preferred method of hacking. So if you go to a landline fax, that's still fairly secure. It's not 100%, as Justin probably could explain to you. But using a service goes a long way towards protecting those communications. And our doing it for you just removes that liability from you. It removes the hassle. We are very clear to the consumers that our wire instructions don't change. So if they get emails, or if they get phone calls, or if they get any communication, because the hackers will try any of those to convince you that the instructions have changed and you should be using theirs. And they're really good at changing PDFs to make them look like they're good. And unfortunately, if they've inserted themselves into the communication process, they even have real staff names. They've also got fake ones that they're using. So, you might have Betty White, who works for Chicago Title, who, to my knowledge, we don't have a Betty White that works for Chicago Title. That's actually one that we saw. I've had them email us saying that they're First American or other title companies, and they get spoofed just like we do. And what they're trying to do is get people to respond and to click any of those attachments, because once you do, you then download. I do too. Betty, I kid you not, Betty White was really a Chicago Title employee on one of those scam emails. But what they're trying to get you to do is give them some access into the transaction, whether that's by accessing your email, whether that's by gaining just information, seeing how you talk. That's why I used to always sign my emails the same. For years, I always signed yours truly. I might still occasionally do it, but I no longer use the same closing to any of my email communications. If they see consistent verbiage that you use, they will even insert those into the communications because it sounds more like you. They want your social media. They will see what it is that you like. They will see where you were this weekend, so they can add into the emails, hey, by the way, I saw you were at blah, blah. And you will think that it's really the realtor that's communicating with you as the consumer, or any other party, because they're aware of what you were doing, and you may or may not have had a conversation, but it sounds logical that your acquaintance or your business partner might know those things about you. So they're really digging deep in trying to find information and make it look like they're the actual party that they're purporting to be. So because of all of that, encrypting is so key, or at least making sure that your client knows if there's something that you've sent them and you're concerned about it, pick up the phone. There's still nothing better than picking up the phone and calling the person that you're working with. Now, that doesn't mean that they should blindly accept a phone call that comes into them, because hackers can also make the phone call look like it's coming from Natalie or Paul or any one of us. They can change that phone so that when your phone tells you who's calling, to make it look like it's anyone they want it to be. So we've had even clients call us who want to confirm information, and we will discreetly, be in a closing or have another reason that we need to call them back at a known number, because we can't always trust that the phone says that it's this number calling us. I'm looking over here because my phone's over there. We can't trust just because my caller ID said that it was this person, that it's this person. So we will still check and recheck.
I would confirm on that completely. One of the things I will always say is I think what's crucial right now is to have a third form of communicating that people aren't used to following. Mm-hmm. A different text basing tool, a secure email platform. And as me and Teresa were talking earlier, I love Gmail. I'm a Google guy all the place, but the problem is with free email, it comes at risk because they don't have all that extra layers that typically cost money to get set up. So paying for that kind of system would work, but have a different solution in place, because I don't know if everybody here is old enough to know that or remember these. I think we all are, but my favorite commercial of all times was the club that you put on the car to protect your car from being stolen, right? You put it across the wheel, that's supposed to protect your car. No one's going to steal your car.
Hank knows.
Oh my God, I remember that.
And the thing was, that wasn't safe, right? If you grab just a small needle nose pliers and you pinched at the right spot, those things broke in half quick. It was so easy to break into. But the problem is why it was safer than anything else is the next car down didn't have the club, so it took less time to take that needle nose pliers and bust it open. And that's all we're trying to recommend today is have that next security be the less easy hack, right? Just be the less easy hack. Have that extra protocol in place where when you're communicating with your client, you force the video conversation this way. Have a protocol in place, office, agents, whatever, that when you're doing this, you're the harder person to go after, right? They're going to have to go to the next person because there's someone easier down the road. And remember, we're over 1 million realtors. There is definitely someone easier down the road. So just don't be that person. Be someone in there to have that out there. And that's kind of what we're trying to talk about today is have those steps in place without getting too nitty gritty about it, without how to get all set up. But just have that next step in place because I think that's huge. Understanding what Teresa was telling us about how easy it is to do today, it's actually mind-boggling. And just to tag onto that, without, again, trying not to get too deep here, but they are actually hiring for English speaking now. They are actually converting American people to actually write those emails. So the English is getting better because the English is their language. It is their first language that is writing it, and they're getting paid to ship that stuff overseas after it's all said and done.
And I think there's at least 5 known countries. It's a legal business for them to target these transactions, and not just in the United States. We're not, by no means is it exclusive to us, and it's working. It is a multi-billion-dollar business.
Yeah, not only legal, encouraged, unfortunately.
Right.
Okay, great. Questions on that? I know, Edgar, did I get deep enough to you on WhatsApp, or do you want me to go a little deeper on that?
Ed, your mic's on, or mic is off. So you can either turn it on or type. You've been great with the comments. Do you want to hear more about WhatsApp?
Okay.
Okay.
So just in short, I will share this real quick. It's just a small little screen on here. Let's pull this up real quick. What apps is it's just a simple app. It's another texting tool that's out there, another messaging tool that's out there that you can have for Android, iPhone, or Mac, or for PCs. Doesn't really matter. It's all out there for that. And what's really nice about it is encrypted. So you can actually, what I love about this is much like what iPhone has done in the last 2 years and Android has done in the last 6 months, is I can continue the conversation. If I started it on the phone, I can continue the conversation on the desktop. It has a desktop solution, so I can continue when I'm not there next to my phone when it needs to be charged, because we're doing this so much these days. And it's secure, right? It actually has a huge security level that's in here. Security by default, it's end-to-end encryption, but it's just a simple messaging tool that's out there. And to be honest with you, by downloads itself, it is the most popular app out there for texting. It's not necessarily the most popular tool used, but app download is the most popular out there. And it's in there, it's safe. It has a bunch of features that are available for you. You can do video, you can do voice messages, you can make phone calls in here to your friends. But again, the struggle with this is, like many apps, is your client, your friends, your family actually has to have this app as well. If they don't have this app, they don't do it. But again, as long as it has access to your database, you can share it with them and they can download it. But I like this because you can invite people in there and it's just really simple. I think the app's super simple.
So is this encrypted WhatsApp?
Yep, it's end-to-end
Okay.
encryption.
Okay.
Yeah. It's,
If you give
sorry?
Justin, if you give them access to your database.
Well, and I say that wrong. It makes people really nervous. And it should. And it really should. So one of the things that most apps do, and this one, as far as I can tell, I think does it the best way, is what it does is it does a one-time pull. If you give it access, you don't have to give it access to do it. But if you give it permission to look at your contacts on your phone, it will then try to find all the people that are on WhatsApp now that you have contacts with. Now, what it appears to do, and everything I see tells me that it does it. I can't promise that it does it because things always happen.
Mhm.
But it appears that once they do that one pull, it no longer keeps the information, because that's where a lot of people were getting in trouble early on with these apps, is they're trying to find similar users that are using the app, but they were keeping that information in their database in an unsecured location.
Right.
That's not what WhatsApp is doing.
Thank you for clarifying.
So, but again, it appears, and everything I can read, everything I tell, I think it works the way it's supposed to, but I can't promise it.
Mhm.
And to me, that's huge, right? And, you know, I think it was about 2 years ago, WhatsApp got hacked. But again, what got hacked was, I think, usernames. That's all that got hacked. So, I mean, it's a fairly secure tool. By the way, if you're going to worry about what's got hacked, you're never using anything.
True.
Everything's been hacked. It's just how it goes. But for me, what I want to know is what's the last thing that got hacked? So they have the sort, you know, who has the best protocols that are out there. For instance, one of my favorite applications is a tool called LastPass. It's a password generator / keeper. And I like it because, again, it got hacked, I don't know, about a year ago, maybe a little bit more ago. But again, all they got was username. They didn't get passwords. They didn't get account information. They got nothing. They got nothing out of it.
And if you change your password, theoretically.
What's that?
And if you change your password again, then theoretically the hack didn't help them.
And speaking of which, I know we're talking about encryption, but since I mentioned LastPass, I'm going to tell you this now. Get a password generator. Do something out there, because you know how most people, you know, the biggest reason most of this stuff is successful is it's called phishing. And what they're doing when they're doing this out here is they're sending a stupid email, or anything really, but it's mostly an email, that says your password is wrong. You need to correct your password. And it's a BS web page. And you type your password in there. And the reason why they want you to type your password in there is the odds are it's about like 60% or higher that the password you typed in there is for all your other accounts. So they don't care that you want to get your password in for Netflix. They just know your Netflix password is your bank password, is your mortgage password, is your X password. That's what they know.
Mm-hmm.
So they just want that password. Once they have that one password, they have you.
I would also caution, I'm going to add, Justin, just a comment to that. If you do a lot of social media, and we all do in our business, right? Everybody's somehow connected to social media one way or another. And many of those games that people will ask you to participate in will ask you some very key and very important questions, like, when's your anniversary? This is my 25th anniversary. I try to stay away from the actual year. A lot of those questions are what? They're your secret questions to regain your password with your credit card company, with your bank, with your whatever. They're the same questions. You know, what was your first car that you drove? Have you noticed if you start watching those questions that get tossed around, and if you go back and you look at what your secret questions are to regain access to some very key and very important data in your own life, you'll find it's the same stuff. And you do not know, one, who's reading your Facebook, who sees those answers, and two, who's keeping track of those. A lot of those games, if you notice, they take you into a separate window and into a separate system. Justin, you probably know better what to call it, but to me, they take me somewhere else. Who's capturing my data and keeping it and filtering it? You don't know. So if they can just get part of your password and enough of it to then trigger those questions, they can change your password and you can't even get access back to your own account.
Well, yes. And this is where, again, this is how I can get down the rabbit hole. You guys get me going.
Sorry.
No, it's good. You just brought another thought up to me. What we should all be doing with our accounts, our email accounts, our phone, our Facebook account, is having what's considered two-factor authentication.
Yes.
And I know it seems like a pain, but they really do it quite easy, because really right now, all they really do is text you to your phone, your 4 or 5 digit code that you got to type in. So it's really easy. Again, it's not perfect, right? Someone, if they actually have access into your account, will have that same PIN sent to them, but it's another step they have to go through to get it done. So it's like the club. It's just one step harder than they need to go through right now. But two-factor authentication is something we should all have at this point in time. I have it on my phone. I don't worry about it, to be honest with you. When I teach most classes these days, I'm teaching CE and I'm going to places, I tell them to never log into a public computer. Several reasons, mostly because you're logging into your account and people can access that stuff. I'll be honest with you. If I'm desperate, I will do it, but I'll do it because I'm not worried about it, because I have all these protocols in place and all these steps in there. Even if they get one thing, they don't get the important stuff from me. They only get one thing. And I have all the protection in the background. So just, have these arsenals, protected passwords, encrypted applications, two-factor authentication. These are going to be the steps that make you harder than the next realtor, your office harder than the next office, to get the business done, to make life just that much easier for your team and your agents and your clients and the people you're working with, right? Chicago Title, your mortgage company, all these companies are going to love you if you are secure, because it makes those conversations so much easier.
And if you're not sure that you have the security, I go back to that. Let me think about, what am I communicating? And in what platform do I need to do it? The more secure you think the information needs to be, just give some thought and maybe pick up the phone and call them. And then they reach directly out to their loan officer, to their title company. I can tell you that any one of us, any reputable partner anyway, is going to welcome those phone calls. Someone can call me anytime to confirm their wire instructions, or to make sure that this email that I got, gosh, it looks like a hoax. Is it real? I get those calls all the time, and we will welcome them because it keeps them safe.
Okay, now it's not the point to scare everybody on this, but how are we feeling about this? And do we got questions along this line before we stop into the last conversation about the notary? Because I think that's huge before we get off.
Okay.
How we doing? Anybody scared? Anybody running away from real estate today?
But we did get a question for the password generation app. Which one do you recommend? And you mentioned one that I also, and Hank can probably attest to this, that LastPass is one that I know that I've used, and I like it. Do you have recommendations, Justin, for other sources?
That's the one I go with, because again, it was the last one hacked. So LastPass, I'll put it in there. It's LastPass, LASTPASS. So it's just short for last password. And the thing that I like about LastPass is two things for it. One, it has one master password. That's all you got to remember is the one master password. And what's nice about that tool, even though they have built certain ways to get around it today because agents or clients have asked for it, LastPass first program and protocols of that tool was, you have to know your password. We're not keeping your master password. We do not know it. So if you lose your master password, you cannot get into LastPass, which, by the way, is probably the most secure package that you can do, because if you can't get into it, no one can get into it, right? It's not going to happen.
Yep. I did that. I had to re-sign up.
Right. So to me, it's one of the nice things about that. Now, you do have LastPass. You have another one that's fairly popular called OnePass. Mm-hmm. There's a couple Google-based platforms where you can create a Google spreadsheet in there. They're not bad. That's more of a storage keeper than it really is a protected protocol. But for me, it's LastPass or OnePass are probably the ones that I encourage the most at. And if you have a family account, and it's free, you get a lot of functionality for free. You can get it you can put it on your desktop. You can put it on your phone. You can do all that in there. And if you have a family, what I like about it, for $12 a year, LastPass will let you have family access. So if you have a husband-wife team, or you need to know your kids' passwords, all that stuff can be on one account, and you can have access to in one information. And to me, that's huge. It doesn't really matter for me, but a lot of people have families out there that need to share those critical account password information. And for $12, I mean, are you kidding me? That's so simple.
And I think that the point of this isn't to scare anyone into thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do anything online. I think the difference is, how can you make yourself and your business stand out in today's environment when everyone has pivoted to doing everything, or at least something, online? How can you as an agent use social media? How can you as an agent send your information and help your clients in an environment that they may not even understand or care about the risks that are out there? But what are one or two quick tips that you could provide to them, whether it's one a week, whether it's one every other week, but it's something that's meaningful to them, and in particular more so today than it was even 2 months ago, because everyone's had to go online more than we would have maybe in the past.
Yeah, good.
Do you want me to segue now into the online notary?
Are we all good, folks?
Yep, everything's fine here. Yeah.
Good. All right, yeah, so I think this is huge. I think the notary, again, I'll give you a little synopsis. Teresa definitely knows way more on this because I spent 3-4 weeks on the e-notary Illinois state committee. E-notaries, this is not e-notary, but this is a version of that, has been going around for states for a while. West Virginia had e-notary for about 3-4 years. States have been trying to figure out if they're going to allow it or not allow it. Obviously, today, when we're in this world, the digital world where we don't meet people face to face anymore, or at least not currently, has changed some of the response rates for this stuff. So the notary has taken a different process, and Teresa's going to talk about it.
So from a title perspective, when the governor gave his executive order that said he's going to allow audio, video, online notarization, there was, that happened on a Friday afternoon, I don't know, let's call it 3. I don't know what time it was, but I can tell you between 3 o'clock, whenever that announcement came out, to 8 o'clock that night, my phone blew up with everyone who wanted to now start doing their closings and have all of their documents notarized online. I can tell you that I have had no answer for them that day. Early the next week, our underwriters, meaning our attorneys and our team, were working with some of the state people to try to determine what the real definition of this meant, both from a state perspective, from an insurance compliance perspective, and then really what's the practicality and how can I still execute our business in the same manner that we're expected and held to from a security perspective. And so it took us a little time, but as of, it's almost been 2 weeks ago now, we began offering to our clients, we're calling it castle signing just because it sounds better than audio, video, online notarization. Whole lot easier to say castle signing than all of that. But we can and we are offering a service that will allow documents to be signed and notarized online. We find that this is most utilized and most beneficial for sellers who really weren't coming to closing anyway. But what you had as we shifted into this COVID environment was you had attorneys, particularly if they or their clients have a compromised immune system, they didn't want to meet either. And so we had some clients coming into the title company, but you have people, even consumers are now calling and saying, how can I do this without coming to see you? My attorney is not interested. My attorney hasn't given me a solution. What are my options? So what we've done is we've put together a service that allows for consumers, their attorney, and the notary, which for the Geneva office happens to be me. We all meet on a platform very similar to this. So we're going to see each other on a camera, much like this, and to comply with the regulations and then our own internal underwriting guidelines, there are some things that apply. One, we can only do it on residential deals and only on deals that are up to $1 million. We must all be, so all of the parties on the call need to be in the state of Illinois at the time that we are having that notary call. So they're asked to verify that on the audio video. I have to record it. I have to be able to see you and I have to be able to hear you clearly throughout the call. And it needs to be recorded and maintained for 3 years. We're doing that. And then we're housing that on a system that also maintains the encryption. So we're only using one platform. I know that there was a lot of talk about using Zoom, about using FaceTime, about using a lot of those different platforms that exist, but it didn't work for us from a company perspective. So we are using Microsoft Teams. If any of you are familiar with that, it's just part of the Microsoft 365 package that's out there. There are a series of steps that lead up to the conversation. We make sure that the clients understand what's going to happen. We send them a quick little YouTube video that's going to explain how to access the system. They don't have to download anything if they don't want to. They do have to give permission for their device, whether they do it on a desktop, whether they do it on an iPad, they can do it on their iPhone, they can do, or any phone, any device that has a microphone and has a camera. What will happen then is we invite everyone into this platform. They're going to have to confirm that you're in Illinois. I need to see 2 forms of ID and I walk through with them prior to the call how they can do the secondary ID. The first one is a driver's license. And because they're showing, I should grab a business card, because they're showing, I'll just use this, because they're showing me their ID, much like this, not that you want to see my handwriting, that's their private personal information. So it needs to be encrypted. And again, that's why we need end-to-end encryption, which Microsoft Teams allows. It allows that throughout the phone call. The video is encrypted and the video is sent, bless you, the video is sent back within like 30 seconds of completion. And then I can drop that into our secure platform that we house all of our documents in post-closing. So as far as the consumer is concerned, it happens just like this. They're going to see us. I will usually try to overnight the originals to them with a return overnight package back to me. I've got to have the documents back, the ones that have their original signatures on it, within 24 hours of the signing. So last Friday, I had 3 of these in the afternoon. One was for a closing Monday morning at 9. Federal Expressing those documents back to me didn't work because the closing was at 9 a.m. They happened to live in St. Charles and we're still open. Our doors are just locked. So they showed up, rang the doorbell, and dropped off their documents for the 9 a.m. Monday closing. The other 2 aren't closing until the 30th of this month. I had plenty of time, but I still need those original documents back within 24 hours. So they may want to take that into consideration when they're scheduling the time to actually do the online audio video notarization. There's a different notary language. If you've ever read the document, there's a notary language, notarial languages get stuck to the deed or to the bill of sale or to whatever. There's something that's different and very specific to allow the online audio video notarization, and that gets added to each document in place of the other notary language. We have found that many clients like this for the power of attorney as well. The difficulty with that, it's not really a difficulty, but it seemed to be at first, was you need to have a witness, which can't be my husband, which can't be the attorney's wife. It can't be any party that's involved in the transaction. It has to be a completely unrelated third party. So typically what I do is, I happen to be at the office right now, I would wander out and I would get Dave Nelson, Sally Satterstrom, someone else from my office to come in, and they join us just while we're doing the power of attorney, which we usually do first, so they can witness alongside my notarization when it comes back, so that they have an effective power of attorney that the seller's attorney can then sign documents at closing. Does that make sense?
Great explanation.
I'm sorry?
It was a great explanation of how it works.
Oh, thank you. I was hoping I didn't bog you down with too many details there. There's some more stuff that happens behind the scene, but really you don't need to care. What you do care about as an agent is that your sellers, and in some cases your buyers, particularly if it's a cash deal, they've got options for limiting their exposure to seeing people face to face, and they can still do so feeling protected and safe and secure. And that's what this is for. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're a buyer and you want to sign your loan documents digitally, most lenders are not approving a platform that allows that, because they still need what we call a wet signature, which is an ink signature, on certain documents. Now, some lenders, and I don't mean to name drop, there are lots of great lenders out there, I just happen to know Guaranteed Rate has what they call a flash close. So you can sign 80% of the documents in a stack this thick digitally. And then we end up with a stack this thick that they'll actually have to sign at the closing, which many are doing curbside, because we still need the wet signatures. They can come in, like my 8:30 closing that I had this morning, the people still came in. Fine, we will still see you. We're required to wear masks as of yesterday, but you can still come in. You can also do what we call curbside closings, which is you can pull up and you can call us and say, hey, I'm here for the Smith closing, and we will bring your documents out to you. If there's an attorney, we will also send that attorney an exact replica of those documents in the same order, so that they can go through those documents on the phone, FaceTime, Zoom, we don't care. What we tell the clients at that point is just please don't show your documents to unsecure, like don't do this. Don't show your documents to the camera in those platforms, because if they're not encrypted and you're doing this and all of your social security number and your private information is there, the risk is probably small, but the risk is still there that someone could hack into that and see your information. So even when I'm doing the seller's information, they get to what's called the seller's 1099 form. I ask them to not fill it out, but because they have to show me, there's a process. They have to show me the form, add your signature and show me that, because I've got to see their signature on it. Then fill in the blanks included in the envelope so that it comes back to me as a completed form. But please don't put your forwarding address and please don't put your social security number until you've put that back down. So again, that's just one less thing that's up there. Even though we're encrypted, I'm the same girl that never wants to use a credit card for your second ID, just because I fear the fewer people that have access to your credit card information is better. So I hope that was a brief but descriptive enough platform to let you know that your clients can conduct business in today's environment, and we continue to try to find ways to make it better and easier for them, understanding that there are a lot of people out there who are really concerned. There are just as many that aren't. But for those that are concerned, no judgment. We want to make sure that we're able to give them the service that they need in a manner that allows them to still sleep well at night. Any questions or any thoughts, comments? Thanks, Ed.
Well, I think that's it for now. But if you guys have questions, anything you want to add, really communication tools that you're liking that you think is knocking out of the park that we're not aware of, would love to hear them. But, that's kind of where we were covering today. Also, if you like this, I think we're going to try to continue this on and make this more of a series, a lunch and learn series where we talk about different topics. You got something, Hank?
Yeah, this is recorded, correct?
Correct.
I'd like to be able to play it back to my business partner in our accounting department. Is that possible? I've never done that before.
What I will do is I will download it to my YouTube channel, and then I will give you the link.
Can you give everybody the link?
I will give everybody the link.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Sounds good.
Justin.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
My
Yeah,
pleasure.
thank you.
And if you guys have ideas on future conversations that you want to have with us, let me know. We're happy to do a lot of these conversations with you, try to do this on, because I think kind of getting ahead of the game of what this looks like for the next few months would be helpful for a lot of folks. So,
Well, we're at least, what is it, May 30th? This is the new way of doing business, at least for the next 6 weeks or so. Please know that if there's anything that we've discussed at any point, you might not realize today, but maybe in 2 weeks or something that you want more information on. Justin and I hope that you'll feel free to reach out in whatever manner makes most sense for you, and feel free to ask us. If there's something that you want to see dug into more, whether it's something we've already covered like LastPass or something else, please let us know. We are happy to tailor our presentations. It's not about us. It's really about giving you the tools that will help you and your clients feel comfortable in today's environment, know that it's still okay to do business in today's environment, and then just be ready that once we're through this, we can all launch our business right back to where we need to be.
absolutely.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, thanks for joining us on your
Thank you.
day. Enjoy lunch. Now we can all go have it.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, see you guys.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.